Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at By Stealth and Sea from DVG Games. Disclaimer that I was sent a review copy of this one. I covered this one back when it was on Kickstarter, and I'm a big fan of David Thompson's designs. I've covered a bunch of them on the channel. How did this one hold up? Let's find out and get to the list. First, for my number 5, I have a pro, but it could be a mix or a con for some people, and you're going to hear that a lot in this review, and that's the Fault Deck. So in the game, you have these 3 subs, and you're trying to sneak into enemy harbors. It's kind of a stealth game to blow up enemy ships. But both at the beginning of the game and at the beginning of every turn, you draw one or more cards from this Fault Deck, which creates a chance for something to break on one of your subs. And it could be something innocuous that you don't need, or it could be something devastating, like one of your wetsuits having a tear, making you freezing in the water, or your warhead not working anymore when you're just about to blow up a ship, or your engine's not fully working when enemy boats are coming. And the reason this could be a mix or a con is because it can be fairly random which ones come out, and it's a die roll whether you avoid the damage or not, so that's also a very random element which might not appeal to some. But for me, it rises up to a pro because a lot of the fun narrative of the game comes from this element. My number 4 is also a pro that could be lower for some people, and that's the Alert Deck. So at the end of every turn, you have this defense phase where you see if searchlights find your subs, or if they're discovered by patrol boats, or if patrol boats blow you up with depth charges. And all of this uses this Alert Deck. And that's the first part where this is a pro for me, because you have to make a lot of rolls and checks in each of these defense phases, but just drawing cards really quickly from this deck is super fast. If I had to actually roll 2d6 each time, it would get really annoying. But also, it flattens out the curve of the probabilities. If you see a really high number come up, then you know you're not as likely to get that anymore. So I like that it's a deck in general. But on top of that, they have this alert card, which is the 12, the worst one you can draw generally. And when that's drawn, you take the lowest cards from the deck out of play. So the deck actually gets tougher the longer you play, which is a nice thematic integration with the idea of the defense is becoming more aware of your presence. But that's also where the frustrating part can be if you don't like as much randomness in your games, because if that 12 comes up frequently, it can really destroy your chances, whereas if you keep on getting it at the bottom of the deck, you can have a much smoother time overall. Next is my number 3, which I'll say is a mix, although I like a lot about it, and that's the core action mechanic in the game. So in a system that's somewhat similar to Robinson Crusoe, each of your subs has 2 actions each round, and you can either do things using only one action, in which case you generally have to roll a die and have a chance of doing nothing or succeeding, or you can spend both your actions to automatically succeed. But the time pressure is such that you probably won't be able to get into the harbor and blow up anything valuable if you don't take the risk and go for those rolls sometimes. And there's also some mitigation to it. Some of your people are better at certain skills, so you can tell kind of how things will go. So I tend to enjoy all of that overall. But the reason this kind of falls to a mix, at least for some players, again, it mostly leans pro for me, is that your actions can be so quick to resolve for your 3 subs that I think some players might feel like the defense phase and resolving all of that actually takes longer and you aren't kind of like doing enough in the game. And I think that's especially going to be true if you try to play this game co-op, because you can divide it up between 2 or 3 players, each of them controlling one or more subs. But with the actions being so fast, I think like 3-player co-op would be pretty dull because you're really dividing things out too much. My number 2 is also a mix, a pretty important one, and that's focused on the scenario variety. But again, this leans pro for me. But to focus on the cons first, although you do have 3 entirely different maps for the game, you tend to use the Gibraltar map most frequently in the different scenarios, and so it can feel a little bit samey because while the pilots change, and while the relative positions of the boats that you can attack changes, and while the defenses change, still the basic kind of scope of the game, moving in, getting into the harbor, blowing things up, is the same. Now, it's much more exciting than that, which is why this still tends to lean pro for me, but it is in some ways a repetitive structure. But I do want to note another element that pushes it pro for me besides the variety I talked about, and that's the fact that you have a custom campaign mode, where you actually level up your pilots as you go with more success, but level up the defenses as well. And that mode forces you to make tough but interesting decisions, like you might want to actually score fewer victory points just to focus on leveling your guys up, so you can smash the opposition later. It's definitely kind of cool. But finally, I'm up to a full pro for my number 1, and like I said, this is a stealth game, and I'm focusing here on that stealth element and how the patrol boats kind of encircle you. So as you go through your mission, you can split up your subs, but the big choice you're going to make is, do you want to be surfaced, or do you want to be submerged? And if you're surfaced, you can move faster, you can turn without rolling, everything is great, except that you're really easy to spot, and the patrol boats can come out and try to blast you to smithereens. Being submerged makes you move slower, you can't turn as well, but moving even one space makes them lose sight of you, so it's an interesting kind of give and take there. And then just the feeling and the tension as more and more patrol boats build up, because once you have some, you're going to get more, and some of the tactics that can emerge from that, like using one boat to try to pull them off, so your other boats can get in safely and blow up some targets, trying to keep a bunch of patrol boats on the map so more can't spawn. It's really interesting, it's a fun stealth mechanic overall, and definitely one of the high points of the game. So overall, I think my Stealth and Sea is going to appeal to wargamers definitely, because many of them are going to be used to kind of the caprices of drawing the wrong card or rolling dice wrong, and there's a lot of randomness here. But also I think more casual gamers could enjoy it too. It's very fast to play, very quick to learn. The stealth elements are great. I think the emergent narrative that can come from things breaking and patrol boats popping up is a lot of fun. But on the other hand, wargamer or not, if you don't like randomness and don't like dice rolling and don't like the deck potentially destroying you or all of your boats being massacred before they even make any progress just because of how things came out, then you really might not like this one, because every element has some degree of randomness, and I think it contributes to the story, but for some gamers it might just be a frustrating point. And if you want to see a full playthrough of a game in kind of the middle of the campaign, click the link that just popped up. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.